Hello, this is a video series on trigonometry. This video is just an introduction and it will be broken up into two parts. The first part will be how to label a triangle, and the second part will be an introduction to the trigonometric ratios. So if we look at our first question, it's going to be how do we label the triangles? So we already know that, hopefully from prior knowledge, that this is a right angle triangle. We already know this from Pythagoras' theorem. If you remember Pythagoras' theorem, so Pythagoras' theorem was c squared equals a squared plus b squared. And we understood that with Pythagoras' theorem, we could only apply that rule to right angle triangles. The same thing goes with trigonometry. We can only apply the ratios at this stage, the basic formulas, with right angle triangles. So just going from prior knowledge from what we already know from Pythagoras' theorem, one of the key parts of Pythagoras' theorem was we needed to know how to label the triangle. So if you remember with Pythagoras' theorem, it would usually be this case, how this would be A, this would be B, and this would be C. However, with trigonometry, we have three other things that we call these sides. So firstly, we already know what one of these sides are. I'm going to label this side, and I'm going to label this side as the hypotenuse. Okay. And what makes this the hypotenuse? Well, what makes this hypotenuse is the fact that it's opposite the right angle side. It is also a diagonal. It is also the longest side of the triangle, as you can see. So that's probably the most easiest one to label. The second one is, if we look at this angle right here, you can see that in between those two lines there is a symbol, and that symbol is theta. So if you want to learn how to draw theta, it's just like that. And theta pretty much represents what we call the unknown angle. If you remember the variable x, x is something that we call the unknown value. So in other words, when you see the symbol theta, that's just another way of saying the unknown angle, or the missing angle. So we've still got two other sides that we need to label. So let's have a look at how we can label those two other sides. I'm just going to switch to red for a second. Now if you look at your reference angle, this is what you call your reference angle. And you can see here, if we are from this perspective, we can draw a line that's directly opposite this angle. So I'm going to start from here. You can just imagine that this line is going all the way across, opposite. And this is the side that we call the opposite. So I'm going to draw sidewards. Opposite. So that is what we call the opposite side. And lastly, what we can conclude with this is that this side will be what we call the adjacent. Now the reason why I say we would call this the adjacent side is because adjacent in its definition means next to. So this, you can see right here, this angle is adjacent to the reference angle. Alright, so let's move on to a clearer picture now, and hopefully we can use that same principle. So once again, we have a different reference angle now. So you can see here that that is the reference angle, and this is implied that that's the right angle. So let's label the three parts of this triangle. Let's remember what they are first. We've got the hypotenuse, we've got the opposite, and we've got the adjacent. So how do we label this on the triangle? Alright, we know where the hypotenuse is. It's right here. Hypotenuse goes right there because it's opposite the right angle. And if we look at our reference angle right here, we can see that the angle, the side right directly opposite it is this side, so we call that the opposite side. And the side that is next to or adjacent to the reference angle is right here, which is what we're going to label as the adjacent. So you can see this all stems from the fact that this is the reference angle. So now I'd like you to pause the video and maybe spend a bit of time to label this triangle yourself, and then unpause when you're ready to label this triangle. Alright, so pause right here. Okay, now that you've unpaused this video, we've had a look at the reference angle, which is here, so reference angle, and I'm just going to switch colors to maybe red. We can see that this is the 90-degree point right here. This is what we call the hypotenuse. From the reference angle, we look at what is directly opposite that angle, which is right here. We call that the opposite. And this angle right here, the side next to it, is what we call the adjacent. Hopefully you got that right. Now, I want you to pause the video and to maybe give this one a shot as well. So pause the video now, and once you're done, unpause it, and you can see how you go with this. So now that you've given this a shot, again, we look at our reference angle right here. This is going to be our 90 degrees. I do apologize, the diagram is indeed cut off from the screen. So maybe if I just move this down a bit. So you can see, this will be our hypotenuse. This side here will be our opposite. And this side here will be our adjacent. Hopefully you can conclude that this is the case. So the question says, what are the values for? So we still need to state these values. We need to make sure that we answer the question. So for the hypotenuse, the value for this is 13. The opposite for this case is 12, and the adjacent for this particular triangle is 5. Alright, see you on lesson 1B very soon.